Niomr secures WTO Fisheries Fund grant, leads Nigeria's implementation agenda. The Nigerian Institute for Oceanography and Marine Research, Niomr, having secured the World Trade Organization Fisheries Fund grant for Nigeria, has now moved into the implementation phase with a one-day stakeholders engagement held on its rollout. The project, titled National Assessment and Capacity Building for the Implementation of the World Trade Organization Agreement on Fisheries Subsidies in Nigeria, is currently in its first phase, focusing on identifying technical areas where Nigeria requires support. The World Trade Organization estimates that harmful fisheries subsidies cost approximately 22 billion United States dollars annually worldwide, underscoring the urgency for coordinated global action. The project is expected to help member states tackle illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing, assess marine resources, and establish effective reporting systems to eliminate harmful subsidies. Speaking on the sidelines of the event, the Executive Director and Chief Executive Officer of Niomr, Professor Abiodun Sule, World Trade Organization consultant Dr. Ken Okalha, and representatives from the Federal Ministry of Marine and Blue Economy, as well as the Federal Ministry of Industry, Trade, and Investment, emphasized the importance of the project.
WTO Fisheries Subsidy Agreement, which we call WTO-F 2022, that came into force in 2025, is about sustainable development, where you are being supported to know what is going on within your domain, monitor it properly, do your stock assessment, control it, and that's what we call MCS. And also to be able to prevent what is called 22 billion poison subsidy. What do they mean by that? That you should know, for example, your fleet, monitor how many vessels that are fishing. For example, we have about 120 in Nigeria at the moment that are really active, and they are contributing to the GDP of this nation. But however, we still have some vessels coming into the country, and that is where the IUU comes up. The minister is doing a lot of work. Don't forget that we have the vessel monitoring system installed, which enables us to track all the fishing vessels in the country. Because if we don't do it, you will see some vessels visiting us, harvesting us illegally, and taking it to the nearby countries, repackage, and send back to this country. So what they are saying, WTO, is that they are going to support us, work together with us. We should know the vessels that we have, know our resources in abundance, and in addition, monitor, so that the landing output can be confirmed.
Nigeria is one of the countries in Africa that was the first to, append the signature and then release instrument of ratification. Some provisions were made for countries, particularly developing countries and least developed countries, to receive some grants, PP1, PP2, to ensure that they can be able to have an assessment of their environment, assess the gaps, assess the needs, and then come up with what could be called the proposal for the PP2. This is the second grant, PPG2. Now, the PPG1 is where we are now. Nigeria, under the Nigerian Institute of Oceanography and Marine Research, applied, and then it scaled through with the assistance of the Federal Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment. A coordination here was formed. And what we are right now doing is to conduct an assessment of the fisheries sector in Nigeria. We are going to take a look at the gaps. We are going to identify what the gaps are in terms of subsidies, particularly. Then in terms of implementation gaps, where are we lacking incapacity to implement the rules as it will.
The world have looked at the stock, the fish stock, and feel that at this point they have to do some certain things, some regulations, so that they can now conserve our biodiversity. We need to know our stock. We need to know what we have. That is the basis of higher trade in international in terms of fisheries. If you are coming to Nigeria to come and invest, and they told you that we have shrimp, will you be able to come and invest in the country? If you say that we have croaker, of what quantity we have, how many species do we have, how many number do we have? That is why they made this fund. How do they monitor the issue of the activities in industrial fishing? Where the VMS comes in, where the NIMASA comes in, where the Navy comes in. How have we been reporting the activities of illegalities in the sector? That is what the WTO want to see.
Nigeria is heavily dependent on the fishery sectors. We have a large coastal area where there are coastal communities that heavily depend on the fisheries sector. And we've identified that the sector, in as much as it is not well harnessed, it carries a very huge potential for development and poverty elevation. So that's the impact of it for us. If we get it right, if we do what's supposed to be done, and like we already have it in this program, we can have a ripple effect.
This grant is submitted. It's actually a plus for Nigerian Institute for Oceanography as an institution, because the grant is actually an institutional grant. And this grant will help Nigeria to be able to address this issue of irregular, unreported and unregulated fishing. And will be able to make us to identify the harmful subsidy going on in Nigerian fishery sector. The objective, assess the problem and the gaps in Nigeria, so that the PPG2 comes in to make provision for the second one.
Stakeholders present at the engagement included the International Ocean Institute (IOI), the Fisheries Society of Nigeria (FISON), the African Women Fish Processors and Traders Network or FishNets, state government representatives, and members of the academia, amongst others. Maritime TV Africa reports that the World Trade Organization agreement and fisheries subsidies came into force in September 2025 after securing acceptance from over 2/3 of its member states.